Truth Seeker, Saturday, September 5th, 2020. Want to bring attention to the fact that CNN on their front page this morning is trying to get reader awareness about it being the 100th night of protests in Portland, Oregon, the state where earlier this year Donald Trump deployed federal police, something we covered. And again, if you're new here, we talk about Gematria, the practice of coding numbers into words. And a number that's very relevant to Portland is 100. And in these 100 nights of protests, why bring attention on the 100th day? Is there significance to 100 to the reader? I suppose it's a milestone number, but again, when you learn Gematria, you see the greater rituals. Just like how last Saturday we talked about the significance of the shooting in Portland, the same day that Cliff Robinson, the Portland basketball star, died. And it caused me to look more into this, the protesting going on in Portland. And something that jumped out right away is the chief of police in Portland right now. He took his position June 8th. And that was of this year, June 8th, 2020. And recall, on June 8th of 2020, something was going on in Portland's northern neighbors, Seattle, Washington. For people not familiar with the West Coast, I know a lot of you on the other side of the country don't even know what states are on the West Coast besides California, but the West Coast has 3 states. California, which takes up about the bottom half, and then Oregon in the middle, and then Washington State in top. Portland's right on the border of Washington State, separated by the Columbia River. Portland and Seattle are about a 2.5-hour drive apart. And through much of this protesting, Fox News, which loves to pander to people with, Republican backgrounds and political right backgrounds, through much of this protesting, Fox News has used Portland and Seattle as examples of, see, look what happens in these liberal cities, keeping people in that political divide and conquer mindset. And again, what I want to show is that these are operations not done so much by liberals, although they might be liberal in philosophy, but these operations are done in liberal and conservative states meant to keep people divided. And what we're going to get into is how there's no doubt that it is the Jesuit order behind what happened June 8th, 2020 in both Portland and Seattle, states in the Pacific Northwest, said to be some of the most, liberal states in the nation. And right now in right-wing media, they're saying, see how bad it is in liberal states. And again, it's bad in liberal and conservative states. What I'm trying to show people in this video is don't get sucked in by the divide and conquer in politics. Understand who's running the theater show and why. And anyhow, before we get to the Portland 100 thing and the police chief, a big news story this week has been how Donald Trump was calling out the Portland city for not arresting the shooter from last Saturday because he tweeted that everyone knew who the shooter was, so arrest him already. And then on September 3rd, earlier this week, federal agents supposedly killed the murder suspect who killed the Portland protester last Saturday. And I want to start with that story because very familiar numbers here. So the man who was killed September 3rd, a date can be written 9/3 or 3/9, Michael Reynal, who reportedly killed a right-wing protester last Saturday in Portland, on September 3rd, he was killed by federal agents who shot him. And this happened in Lacey, Washington, right next to Olympia, Washington, where Washington State's capital is. And anyhow, the man who was killed, his name was Michael, which has gematria of 39, like federal 39, like Antifa. And he was said to be a member of Antifa. And prior to the shooting, Vice News, that same day, Vice News ran the clip of this man, Michael, admitting to the killing in a Vice News story. He said that the reason he killed the protester is because if he didn't kill that man, he was going to kill a black man. So he's saying that he killed the right-wing man to save the black man. That was his story to Vice News on September 3rd, 3/9, where again, Michael, Federal, Antifa, Vice, they're all 39. And remember what Vice News is. They are the same publication that wrote this article about me, November 20th, 2017, wacko YouTuber approves World Series was rigged. And again, that year in August, I explained why the Astros would beat the Los Angeles Dodgers, what it had to do with the way they rig up sports, and how much power and influence the people in this world have. And for anyone who reads this article and sees what he had to say, he makes fun of how I said Matt Harvey became the first pitcher to pitch in Houston after the flooding of Harvey exactly 52 days before the World Series, when Texas flooded on a date with 52 numerology, plus being the 239th day of the year, the 52nd prime. And how year after year there's flooding and storms that make landfall on 52 date numerology. And I've been talking about this for a number of years. That's why I understood the pattern in 2017. I released a book that has a massive chapter about this in 2018, Weather Warfare 52, the history of rigging up so many things with the weather, including the world of sports, which has happened multiple times just in the 21st century. Hurricane Katrina and then the Saints by the numbers winning the Super Bowl. But, and for anyone alive when Katrina happened, don't you remember how the news told us for nearly 2 weeks that that storm was going to hit New Orleans, and then it did, and then the federal government said they were surprised and not aware? Again, all this stuff is mockery. But the point I want to make about this Vice News article making fun of me, and again, we're bringing up Vice News because they're part of this story from September 3rd, the latest. The reason I want to bring this up again is because in May of this year, I told people to circle the dates July 25th, August 4th, August 24th, September 3rd, September 23rd, possibly October 2nd. I said all those dates have 52 numerology, and on May 7th of this year, which was a date with 52 numerology, we get this article from, the scientific experts that it's going to be a really bad hurricane year. I said circle all your 52 dates because we know how this works. So far, July 25th, August 4th, August 24th, September 3rd, and August 26th, the 239th day of the year, which is the 52nd prime, all those dates, a storm has made landfall on. And we said that back in May. And we've been doing this year after year. So the stuff that I teach about, it just becomes more and more relevant with time. And there's a lot more to say about that, but again, I just want people to understand it was Vice News that wrote that article. USA Today also took a shot at me in January 2016, trying to make fun of the work for being correct. And again, just realize how this Vice News is now part of this federal news story that's just a big coincidence, right? That Michael, Federal, Antifa, Vice, they're all 39. And for people who are new here, you might see on the screen that one cipher says reverse full reduction, the other says English ordinal. Gematria is a system, and you want to know all the ciphers. There's 4 base ciphers. If you know these 4 ciphers, you'll understand the system. It's the alphabetic order. A is 1 up to Z, the 26 letters, 26, just changing letters to numbers. The alphabetic order in reverse. Z is 1 back to A is 26, and then those 2 orders using the rules of numerology, which just means making the number that represents the letter a single digit. So, for example, Z with the regular alphabetic order is 26, but when you use numerology, 26 is 2 plus 6 is 8. Y, the 25th letter with numerology, is 2 plus 5 is 7. X, the 24th letter, is 2 plus 4 is 6. So very simple. And there's more that can be said about the name Michael in terms of its gematria, but I just wanted people to understand the 39. So notice the name Michael is also 33, right? This happened in Oregon. And Oregon is the 33rd state. And remember, federal in that same cipher that Michael's 33, federal's 33, order's 33, secrecy's 33, race war's 33. And they made that element part of this story because Michael said he killed the racist man to save the black man's life. So they made race a part of this story as well. The rioting for George Floyd began on East 33rd Street. The LAPD beating of Rodney King was March 3rd, 3-3. And again, police is 33, LAPD is 33. But I want to come back to Michael and again explain the significance of the ciphers. Notice the 51 and 138. He was killed by federal agents, right? Federal. Watch how federal and Michael overlap. They are the exact same in all 4 base ciphers. So Michael killed by federal agents in a state that wasn't Oregon, right? Again, that's the power of federal because they can cross borders. Police have jurisdiction, but not federal police, which Trump just experimented with in Oregon, the 33rd state. Also, as we'll be getting into the Jesuits, Rome equals 51. The Jesuits serve Rome, and these operations are being done by the Jesuits, who've been in the nation's city, or the federal city, Washington, D.C., longer than the federal capital's been there. Washington, D.C. was once known as Rome on the Potomac. And remember, in the most pure cipher, out of the 4 ciphers, what's considered the most pure is the dark blue cipher, known as Pythagorean Gematria, or full reduction on this calculator. Again, that's just the alphabetic order with the rules of numerology. And when you think conspiracy in 51, think of Area 51, Federal Area 51, Conspiracy 51. And we live in a society where people have been programmed that once they hear the word conspiracy, they associate it with 2 thoughts. Conspiracy theory, not legitimate. And that's by design, because everything that's being done to us through the media, through the government, through our miseducation, indoctrination system is part of a grand conspiracy to control us, to exploit us, to use us, to abuse us. And when you learn the code that these people operate by every single day, you see that this is what they do every single day. Every single day. And again, it's bigger than just about manipulating people. As I've always taught, there's an organic side to this code. There's like an organic matrix of these numbers as well. But it's very obvious through the sinister headlines, the obvious lies, the plots. It's like the people in power, they're aware of this, numeric matrix, and it's like they try to manipulate it every single day to their advantage, somehow using the power and vibration of these numbers, things that are taught about in ancient knowledge like Hermeticism, where everything carries a vibration, every shape, every sound, every letter, every number, and if you know how to harness that energy, you can use it to your advantage. And that's essentially what we're seeing done every single day by the people who possess this knowledge and, keep it hidden. And not only keep it hidden, but use their mainstream to denounce old world information such as astrology and numerology. You can give people very clear examples, but because of their programming and cognitive dissonance, they'll just say things back like, numerology is stupid. And you can tell they didn't think about anything. It's like, did you just listen to what I said? When I was in March on the streets of Seattle, a guy asked me, and he came up as a skeptic, and he said, can you use this besides anything to expose coronavirus? And I laughed and I said, yeah. I said, you can expose a lot of things. And I said, the way I started researching this honestly goes back to September 11th, because I saw that there was a national emergency on 911, and the way the buildings collapsed in Manhattan didn't sit right with me, turning to dust. Considering that Manhattan Project was something we were all taught about in school, that was this weapons program to develop sophisticated weapons, and a whole lot of other things. The fact that they called the site Ground Zero after the World Trade Centers fell, and the only definition for Ground Zero before 9/11 was the point above or below ground where a nuclear or atomic weapon explodes. So, anyway, I was explaining that to the man, and I said, and here's what's interesting about this. I said, I explained to him the same way. I said, there's one cipher that's considered the most pure cipher, and I learned about it in Manly P. Hall's The Secret Teachings of All Ages. Again, this man that wrote a lot of books, shared a lot of information, and in that book, which there's a lot, it's a wide book, there's a lot, it's dense. In that book, there's just pretty much one page in there that introduces this subject to Gematria, and he introduced the alphabetic order, and the alphabetic order of the rules of numerology, and again, to make that clear, it's the green cipher and the blue cipher. He introduces those 2 ciphers. And he recommends that if you really want to research, to use the dark blue cipher. But what we've learned over the years is, yeah, these ciphers are definitely important, the 2 he recommends, but when you run the alphabetic order in reverse, it is just as important. Well, almost. And anyway, I read that page and I thought, let me go back and look through history, and I started to find a lot of stuff really fast. And I said, something's going on here, and then I started to compare it to regular news, and I was like, wow. Just like, it's been stuff like this the whole time. September 3rd, Antifa guy killed by federal police, Vice News. These are the kind of stories we've been covering for 7 years straight, trying to get people to see, look, the media is an information weapon, giving you divisive stuff, misleading stuff, mind control type stuff, every single day. And It's funny, back then in 2013, 2014, things I was saying when I made my earliest videos, as I said, it's funny I'm from Portland and I never thought about our nickname, Rip City, R.I.P., like rest in peace, because it was around that same time that Portland ran it might have been a little bit before that, I've lost track, it could have been as far back as 2010, it was somewhere in that window of time that Portland ran a simulation that was said to be the biggest simulation ever of a nuclear blast going off in the city, and I was thinking at times, like, why would they do that in Portland? I guess we're not that big of a city, but, we're still a city, so maybe it's easier to simulate in that environment. Portland downtown isn't normally real crowded, and, but I was like, why? And I was just thinking about it, I was like, well, our nickname is Rip City. I guess I never really paid attention to that before, Rip City. But it's funny that also at that time I was saying the same thing. I was saying 2020. I said, we got to get organized. We got to wake the people up. 2020, if we're not woke and the people from 9/11, the people responsible for 9/11, if they haven't been brought to justice and the world hasn't woken up to these agendas, it could get real ugly by 2020. And now it's just funny because it's like 2020, Portland all year, well, for a big chunk of the year, I should say, ever since the George Floyd thing, been part of these ongoing federal operations. And again, it is the 33rd state. We know how much the feds love 33. But again, it's surreal watching all of this happen. And by the way, with regards to all the 39 stuff, I forgot to mention that the man who he killed was said to be a 39-year-old, a white supremacist 39-year-old. And his name was Danielson. So, in addition to the September 3rd killing of the man who killed the 39-year-old, where again all this lines up with the date, the victim his surname was Danielson, which has Gematria of 93 and 39, like how reportedly his killer was killed on September 3rd, written 9-3 or 3-9. And again, these are the ciphers that Manly P. Hall wrote about. This book's old. He wrote about this way before I was alive. And this book, which also all it talks about is the dark blue cipher, the one where Danielson's 39, that book's from way before I was alive. She, the author of that book, shared that cipher and said that she only shares that cipher, but she says in there, she says just within people who speak English, there's over 100 different Gematria ciphers being used by different organizations. But Danielson, 9339. What are the odds? And there's a lot more that's interesting in here. There's a lot more that can also be said. His name, Michael Rainhall, 137, that's the 33rd prime. Again, we just talked about how Michael and Federal are the exact same. In all four ciphers, Michael and Federal, perfect match. Michael killed by Federal police, but his, where'd we go? His name, Michael Rainhall, just using the alphabetic order, 137. A lot of these numbers up here are interesting, you guys, by the way. Murders, 83 and 79. He's a murderer. Mainstream's 113. The Jesuits operate in 112 countries. We still got to get to the Jesuits. But this 137, again, with this being a federal operation, Washington, D.C. is 137. Government is 137. Authority is 137, and remember, 137 is the 33rd prime. Again, coming back to the killing in Oregon, the 33rd state, Federal 33, Michael 33, Police 33, Masonry 33, Secrecy 33, Modern Freemasonries under the Jesuit umbrella. And again, this is just like the kind of Fox News coverage right here. Fed takedown, equals 54, like Jesuit order. So Portland's the focus here. Seattle's the focus here. And again, the same day the autonomous zone was set up in Seattle is the same day Portland got its police chief, and we're going to talk about why that matters. So let's get into that right now. Again, CNN, controlled by Jesuits. They just had the big Jesuit ritual with their founder dying. Not Ted Turner, but the other founder. The two men who founded it. Huge Jesuit ritual with the man who just died a couple months back. Covered that then. But CNN, that loves to be on scene instigating riots, something in the 2014 post-Black Lives Matter era. But anyway, they're bringing attention to the 100th night of protests in Portland. And notice today, September 5th, 2020, it's a date with 54 numerology. And as we'll get to, Chuck Lavelle, the chief of police in Portland, he took his position June 8th, 2020, which was a date with 54 numerology. And that's the exact same day the Autonomous Zone was founded in Seattle, Washington. Both dates with 54 numerology. Remember, Jesuit order equals 54. Remember, where the Autonomous Zone was set up in Seattle was next to Seattle University, one of the nation's 27 Jesuit universities. And the Autonomous Zone was set up in the Capitol Hill neighborhood where the Jesuit University is. Notice Capitol Hill's 54, Jesuit Orders 54. The first Jesuit university was established by John Carroll, 54, when he was 54 years old in 1789 on January 23rd, which was Georgetown in Washington, D.C., the federal city. So what are the odds? You just got to say, what are the odds that these operations are taking place in Portland and Seattle at the same time? Seattle's setting up its autonomous zone in the Jesuit neighborhood. Portland is replacing its police chief. Two relatively small cities compared to the ones on the East Coast. Easily hijackable is the point I'm making. And notice the man's name, Chuck Lavelle. Chuck Lavelle is 56, like Society of Jesus. And we've been talking up and down about all the rituals with Black Lives Matter, the Society of Jesus, coronavirus, I Can't Breathe. In 56, we started talking about 56 even before that. We talked about it with the killing of Soleimani, which equals 56, where it was reported that 56 people were stampeded at his funeral. We talked about it with the college championship game, where the LSU coach had won 56 games to start the year, and his name equals 56. Coronavirus, 56. Gavin Newsom, Jesuit educated, said 56% of California will get coronavirus in 8 weeks, which is 56 days. The 56th governor, Chris Cuomo in New York, his brother, Andrew Cuomo's the 56th governor in New York. Chris Cuomo's his brother on CNN, and Chris Cuomo's 56, who supposedly came down with the virus, and a million other things. Kobe Bryant buried in Corona del Mar, 56. And again, a million other things. So much 56 this year. Headline just the other day in South Korea, 56 people got sick at a Starbucks, a Seattle company, where these big Jesuit tech companies are. You know, San Francisco, Jesuit Mecca, same with Seattle. All these tech companies controlling the information in this age during the time of these agendas out of these cities. And again, just what are the odds? Chuck Lavelle, Society of Jesus. Furthermore, with regards to the Jesuits in today, well, let me make 2 points. Pope Francis, the first Jesuit pope, remember he's the 266th pope, the Jesuit motto in their logo, IHS, which stands for Isus Hominum Salvator, which equals 266, just like the Holy Roman Empire's 266. Pope Francis, the 266th pope. He stood next to Obama in Washington, D.C. on the 266th day of 2015, which was September 23rd. But look at this. Pope Francis' birthday to today is 263 days. It means in 3 days it will be 266, which is the Virgin Mary's birthday that the Catholic Church worships. But from his birthday to today is 263 days, which is the 56th prime number. And Society of Jesus is 56, and Pope's 56, and there's been all these rituals this year sync with Pope Francis and the Superior General of the Jesuits, which I didn't even look into in this one, and we look there, there'll probably be more. But again, just what are the odds? And we'll see what they do in Portland tonight. And keep in mind that today's date is September 5th, written 9/5 like 95. Remember, the Jesuits were created to counter the 95 Theses written by Martin Luther to expose the Catholic Church of its corruption. And that's because what the Catholic Church was doing back then was investing in the things that they said were sin to get people to go into those things so that they would come back on Sunday and pay for forgiveness in what the Catholic Church called indulgences, paying to have your sins forgiven. It was a money-making empire, truly. And for that, the Jesuit order was formed and soon after recognized by Rome, and soon after Martin Luther, the leader of the 95 Theses and Protestant Reformation, was dead. And the Jesuits were recognized by Rome September 27th, the day leaving 95 days left in the year. And with regards to Martin Luther King Jr., who wasn't born Martin, who took that name in tribute to Martin Luther, who led the Protestant Reformation, he was killed he was killed April 4th, 68, the 95th day of that leap year. And again, 1968 was a massive year. Catholicism equals 68. Bobby Kennedy, Catholic, went down that year. Remember, RFK equals 35 and 46, like Catholic equals 35 and 46. JFK, the only Catholic president to date, number 35, killed at age 46. And, but again, 1968, so many important agendas took place. That was the year that 911 was made the national emergency dialing code. That was the year that World Trade Center construction began in New York. That was the year that George W. Bush graduated from Yale and Skull and Bones. And his birthday is July 6th, the span of 68 days from 9/11, plus it's the 187th day of the year, and Society of Jesus is 187, so is Washington, D.C. Both of those names are 56 and 187. And again, Society of Jesus is the official name of the Jesuits. But, anyway, all these agendas. And since I brought up 68, remember, Seattle, Washington equals 68 in the most pure cipher. It also equals 94. And remember, the World Trade Centers, construction began on them in 68. The firm that was building them was Magnuson Klemenkic Associates out of Seattle. And with regards to Seattle, Washington being 68 and 94, the World Trade Centers opened April 4th, 73, which wasn't a leap year, so it was the 94th day of the year. And a leap year, it's the 95th, like MLK was killed on that date. But look at the word terror. 68 and 94. And again, 9/11 and 68. Again, 911 made the national emergency dialing code. World Trade Center construction began. George W. Bush out of Yale, Skull and Bones. And Yale and Skull and Bones gets its name, or it's related to the Bavarian Illuminati, which was established by the Jesuit Adam Weishaupt. But again, just what are the odds of these things? You know, the original definition of terrorism is government by intimidation. And if you don't think we have that in the United States, you need to think again. Fear controls. And that's been known for much longer than the U.S. has been around. But again, 6/8, that was the day that the autonomous zone was set up in Seattle, Washington, which is also the day leaving 206 days left in the year, and Seattle's the 206 area code. And like we predicted right after the news broke, we said, watch June 20th, 20/6, something bad will probably happen there, because Seattle's the 206, and sacrifice equals 206 in Jewish Gematria. Sure enough, there's a deadly shooting of a 19-year-old in the autonomous zone on June 20th. And Seattle's one of the only cities in the world that equals 19. Chaos equals 19, like the Jesuit motto, order out of chaos, also used by the Scottish Rite, which was founded by the Jesuits in 1801. And so we'll see what happens today in Portland, but do understand, all this stuff is orchestrated agenda. The Jesuits operate by infiltration. In light of the 56 points we're making, don't forget Jenny Durkin, who's the mayor of Seattle right now. She's the 56th mayor. Just like Chicago has their 56th mayor right now, where Bill Gates out of Seattle is building Jesuit high schools. And don't forget that Lori Lightfoot, who happens to have the same birthday as Obama, 84, Jesuit 84. Lori Lightfoot asked for $56 million for the contact tracing, which was brought about in a bill, H.R. 6666, by Bobby L. Rush, 56, out of Louisiana, or not Louisiana, out of Illinois as well. But again, she's the 56th mayor, and she said on Chris Cuomo, during a CNN Chris Cuomo interview, that Seattle might have the summer of love. And remember, on July 4th, you had a national news story out of Seattle, how at a Black Lives Matter protest, girls were, well, one was fatally injured, and one was severely injured, and I actually have not followed up to see if she survived. But I know one was reported dead, and then the other one was in critical condition at, I believe, Harborview in Seattle. But anyway, that was on July 4th. And there was a lot more to that, but just focusing on the 56, Summer of Love's 56, Society of Jesus 56, Coronavirus 56. She said that on a Chris Cuomo interview 56. And there's actually a lot more to it. I'm just going to skip over some of it because it's not as interesting. From Jenny Durkin's birthday, though, to the July 4th ritual in Seattle with the girls Summer and Love, it was her 47th day of her age. Jenny Durkin's 47. It happened on July 4th, a date that can be written 4/7. And keep in mind, Seattle's on the 47th parallel north and has some very interesting coordinates in light of biblical numbers and concepts, in light of the Society of Jesus, the Catholic Church, the Jesuits running the show. And again, for people who think all this stuff is just hocus pocus, there's a reason they put it in the movies. I encourage everyone to watch the movie Rosemary's Baby. It's a very creepy movie, but it's about selling your soul to essentially the satanic cabal for success. And what the man who wants fame has to do is give up his wife so that she can be raped by Satan, who's referred to as Adrian in the film, which equals 47 like beast. And if you watch the film, when the rape scene is happening, if you pause it, you'll notice you're in the 47th minute of the film. It's not an accident. This stuff's like this in all sorts of movies. And there's a lot of stuff about that movie where the suicide happens in it. If you look, they pan down the street and you see there's a Volkswagen Beetle right there. That's the same spot that John Lennon was supposedly killed in history in that movie, Rosemary's Baby. And it's all synced up with Roman Polanski. All roads lead to Rome. There's a lot to it. The Sharon Tate murders, Charles Manson, it's, again, they intertwine the world of news, which is truly scripted theater, with the world of Hollywood and entertainment. And I think they do it for multiple reasons. One, they want everyone to be subjected to their agenda. They know people who don't consume news probably consume entertainment. That's why they do their rituals in sports, everything. That's why on Netflix, as soon as the George Floyd thing happened, and on Hulu, if you turned on either, like the day of or day after, Netflix and Hulu already had special graphics with Black Lives Matter and Black culture and this recommended playlists. Like, look how organized all this is. They want you in the what they're creating, the political theater, the atmosphere. They want you to think about it, to become a part of it, to have an opinion, And it's not to say that these things aren't worth thinking about. It's to understand how we are being managed and controlled. And look at what the Democrats did. Think about do you remember the time before coronavirus? Think about all the problems in this nation. Well, what did the Democrats campaign on this year? That they're going to be strong against coronavirus and Donald Trump's very dangerous for the country. What about everything else? What about all the terrible problems that continue to just take place in this country that never get addressed? What about all the excess spending on military and police constantly while so many things are neglected? And should we even be giving our money to government at the rate we do in taxes? We're taxed on everything. Maybe poor people would be better off if they could just keep some of their own money and take care of themselves in their own community instead of paying taxes and expecting the government to come take care of them, which they never do. You know what I mean? And not just poor people, but almost all people. But yeah, just these 47 rituals. Again, 47 is a number of the Vatican. Francis and Vatican equal 47. Don't forget that the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., was laid out by a French Freemason, L'Enfant Francis 47, like Francis is 47. In Paris, France, the home of the Jesuits. The first Jesuit pope is Francis. Donald Trump runs for president during the time of House of Cards. And what's the president's name in that show? Francis Underwood. Francis 47, Underwood 47, President 47, White House 47, Government 47, Authority 47, the Cabal 47, Policeman 47, Cop 47. Just all these 47 words. Trump 47, his building burns on April 7th, 47. He sits in the 47-story Midtown Hilton Hotel the night of the rig selection, replacing Obama, who took office at 47, with the 47th Vice President Biden. And then the Ukraine scandal in Ukraine 47, and their president's a former comedian. Our president's an actor. By the way, Trump's like a remold of Ronald Reagan, and Ronald Reagan equals 56, like Washington, D.C., like Society of Jesus, like how Trump's Jesuit educated, having gone to Fordham 56 years before 2020 in 1964, just like Cuomo, the governor, the 56th governor, governor of New York, he went to Fordham. Society of Jesus 56. In light of that July 4th ritual in Seattle where the woman was killed, Summer in Love, after Jenny Durkin said Summer of Love, killing, holiday, Masonic, Jewish, occult, English, Gematria, they're all 74 like Independence Day. And by the way, out of the 50 states, and once upon a time I did this by hand back when I only knew the alphabetic order and alphabetic order with rules of numerology, I noticed that only the 33rd state summed to 74, Oregon. And around the same time I made that connection, I was already aware of this, which I found very interesting. Again, just knowing the alphabetic order, the cipher on the left, the dark green cipher, once upon a time I wrote all the state names by hand, and I decoded them with the only two ciphers I knew, the green and the blue. And I noticed out of 50 states, only one equals 74, and again, it was the 33rd. And just prior to that, I had learned that gospel, parables, Messiah, Jewish, Jesus, cross, I had noticed they were all 74. And I was like, whoa, Jesus on the cross at 33 out of the 50 states, the only one that equals 74 is Oregon? And again, so I saw that whoever had encoded the language obviously was paying tribute to Jesus. And from what I had read when I was doing my early research, is that this code came from Kabbalah, and it had to do with God and how God operates. And then I read that Jews write God, G-D, G's the seventh letter, D's 4. So I was like, okay, 7-4, God. In Hebrew, Tetragrammaton's 47, which is the same letters. And in Hebrew, you read right to left. So, if you were reading Hebrew, 47 is kind of like 74, because you read from right to left. But I was like, okay, so this is about God. They've encoded Jesus with these numbers, the Son of God in Christianity. And, that's why over all these years we've been trying to figure out who is at the tip of the spear. Years ago, it became clear to me that in the world of sports, it was Jesuits and Catholics, because there's just so many players with Catholic and Jesuit backgrounds, especially the biggest stars, and the rituals, just always paying tribute to the Jesuit numbers. And I should have, just in hindsight, I realized that I should have figured out that it was the Jesuits in control of the news, too, because the fingerprints always were there. It's just not as overwhelming as it is with sports, with all the Catholic participants. It's not quite as overwhelming. But because of everything they've done this year, in Event 201, the coronavirus simulation on the same day as the military World Games in China, and the numbers they coded all over that, which are all the Jesuit numbers. Again, Event 201. We're living at the time of the first Jesuit Pope, Pope Francis, who's the first Pope to live in Suite 201. And it's called the Domus Sanctae Martyr, which equals 201, like Ignatius of Loyola's 201, the founder of the Jesuits, like Jorge Mario Bergoglio's 201, who's Pope Francis, and so on and so forth. And not to mention things like Anthony Fauci, the Jesuit, at Georgetown on January 10th, 2017. So a Jesuit-educated man, Fauci, at a Jesuit university said 10 days before Trump took office that there'd be a surprise outbreak and pandemic under Trump. And he was very confident about it. How can you be so confident about when a pandemic's going to come? And again, two ways to look at it. The pandemic was declared March 11th, 2020, which is 78 days after Fauci's birthday. Notice Jesuit 78, Wuhan coronavirus is 78, Jesuit motto, order out of chaos, is 78. The other way to look at it is he was 79 years old, and it was 78 days after his birthday, but if you count the day of his birthday, it means it was his 79th day of his age. And Society of Jesus is 79. And you see how it's 56 and 187? Look at Anthony Fauci. Anthony Fauci, 56, 187. Look at Washington, D.C., 56, 187. And look at Anthony Fauci in Washington, D.C., the exact same in all four ciphers. And remember, the first day of this Major League Baseball season that was impacted due to coronavirus, it set up this perfect ritual with Fauci and the pitcher making the debut for the New York Yankees, Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole was pitching in Washington, D.C., the Jesuit city, in his first game with the Yankees. And he signed with the Yankees on his 95th day of his age. And then in his debut with the Yankees, where Fauci threw out the first pitch, he got his 95th career win. And as Rambo pointed out, that was on the date of the heliacal rising of Sirius, the dog star, Sirius 95. And remember, the Jesuits formed to counter the 95 Theses recognized by Rome on the day leaving 95 days left in the year. Again, the day Event 201 happened, the coronavirus outbreak simulation, October 18, 2019. That was the day leaving 74 days left in the year. Jesus, 74. On that day, the military World Games began in Wuhan, China, and those military World Games began in 95 in Rome, where the Jesuits operate on behalf of. So, again, there can be no mistake about what's going on. And, Dan Barron, if you're out there, man, I love you, but I saw your recent video where you said some people are saying they think the Jesuits are behind everything. He's like, I disagree. I'm pretty sure that, all of this is just somehow the way the world operates. I agree with Dan. The world does operate with these numerical synchronicities. Case in point, I had a huge one yesterday. Yesterday started off so great and so nice, and about midday I got really frustrated. And I'll tell you that story right now. And I'll tell you what, it was a perfect day for me to have such a day. It was like my number. So the majority of my life I've been called Zach Hubbard, right? Zach Hubbard with the alphabetic order equals 94, and with the alphabetic order rules of numerology it equals 49. My date of birth, July 21st, 17. I'm not that old. July 21st, 1983. That was a date with a life lesson number of 49. And, again, this is factual. My dad's birthday is April 18th, 1953. 4 plus 18 plus 19 plus 53 is 94. And from his birthday to the day I was born is 94 days later. And, had extra meaning to that phrase like father, like son. And anyway, this is how my day started yesterday. I got this text message getting blown up by a name I haven't seen for a long time in my phone. And it's a father of a student I used to have. And I read the text messages. And he says, hey, can you please get in contact with me? My son's going through a tough time right now. You were a really great influence in his life when he was younger. He still talks about you. He still says you're his favorite teacher. And to be fair, out of all the students I've ever had, I've given my students a lot of energy and attention. This child I spent more time with because the other faculty at the school were very frustrated with how difficult he was. And I always love a challenge. And I was a challenge when I was a kid. And his father hired me to work with him outside of school, which at first I was resistant to doing because I was so busy. But he was just so worried about his son, and he was worried that his son wasn't that intelligent. And I knew that wasn't the problem. It was that he was bored and just didn't really care in what was being offered at school. So anyway, I ended up spending a lot of time with this child outside of school because he wasn't even in my own class. He was in another teacher's class, and that teacher was just fed up with him. And so was pretty much every faculty in the building that had to work with him. But I thought he was great. I love this kid. To me, he was funny, and I saw the good qualities in him. And anyway, this is years ago. This is 2012-13 school year I met him, and I worked with him a lot in that time. I haven't worked with him for about 7 years. And they don't even live in the same city. And for those of you who are veterans, you might recall years ago, I think I might have cried in that video, but I said I just thought it was the strangest thing what happened. That an adult who had found my work in the Bay Area and who was teaching this work to other people himself ended up tutoring this same child because the family moved back to the area. And one day, because he saw the child was really into sports and he liked numbers, that he decided to show him one of my videos on sports, and the child surprised him because he said, "Is that Mr. Hubbard?" And the guy's name was Cliff, and he was like, "Wait a minute. How do you know who this is?" And he's like, "He used to tutor me." And not only did I used to tutor him, but I used to take him, I taught him how to play baseball. I spent a lot of time with him with sports. I took him to Mariners games. And so anyway, his dad reached out to me yesterday, and he said that, because everything going on in the world, his son's going through a tough time. And I'm sure this is true about so many other children. And he also said, can you send me a video right now that I can show him on his birthday? Because he's going to turn 16 later this month. And that just blew my mind. I was like, whoa, that much time has gone by. He's 16 now. Because, 2012 when I met him was like half his life ago. So I think he was 8 years old back then. And anyway, I contacted his dad and I talked to him, and he just let me know that their family. I don't want to reveal all their information, but their family's going through tough times. He's going through tough times. Um, and he just said, can you send him this birthday wish? And he said, also, if you're willing, would you be able to talk to him again and see if you can motivate him and inspire him? And it's going to be tough because he's a teenager now. You can be when you're a teenager. But I said, yeah, I'm happy to do all that. So we'll see if there's another conversation. But it was just nice to hear in the morning, that the father and the family, they're still touched by what I did for their child. And I'll tell you how simple it was. Life is really not that difficult. And to get people interested in things, you have to find what they're interested in. And if you have to figure out a way to connect that subject matter to what that child is into. And for some adults, that might be easier to do because they might also have an interest in that, or they might have a background in that, or know something about that. I mean, if you were an adult and you found out a child was really interested in something you knew nothing about, you could still make an effort to connect those things. But in this case, once I found out the child loves sports and he kind of liked numbers and baseball stats and calculating, box scores with his dad, I was just like, okay. Well, I didn't know just what to do here. So, because again, he was at this private school at the time, and there's just so much pressure, and a lot of the children there are whiz kids because their parents have money and time for all these tutors, and his dad was just looking at his son thinking like, my son's way behind the rest of the class. Is there something wrong with him? And not at all. I mean, his child was probably honestly one of the smartest kids in there, and he was just so bored with everything that he didn't care. But once he saw the relevance of how his schoolwork could fit into, the studies he's already doing and understand things better, then all of a sudden he was willing to put forth the effort. And when I first met him, he didn't want to do any of his math. He didn't care about reading and writing. It was so boring. And again, we just turned out how to make it fun, how to make it relevant. And I did that for a lot of kids too. It's just the year that happened, I was working at a private school for the first time, and the school district I worked in before, parents didn't have extra resources, and it's taboo for a teacher to go over to a child's house, which is also why I didn't want to do it at first. But it was a good experience, and also to be perfectly honest, when I first started working with him, because he was a handful, I had to make him deals, and I don't like to say like, if you do this for me, child, I'll do this back for you, but I had to bait him like that with some things. And it was, you know what? If we do this work and get it done today, let's go out. We'll throw the ball around. I'll help you work on your swing, how to hit the ball further. And that was the kind of stuff we did. And I would have loved to do that with more children. It's just, out of all the children I've ever worked with, and I've worked with children in group homes, teen homeless shelters, public schools, private schools, I got to spend more time with that child than any other just because of the circumstances. But anyway, it's sad to think that, all these years later, he was doing so great. I mean, I can just, see him as an 8, 9-year-old, just his confidence. I went to his Little League games too. I mean, smacking the ball around, feeling good about himself. It was fun to watch. And it's just like he's going through a tough time right now. And I'm sure so many children that I've worked with and so many people that I've known, I'm sure just so many of us are going through a tough time because of everything that's being done right now. These agendas, all this stress, all these politics, all these fears and threats. And again, this has been my motivation the whole time, to help people see the agenda that we're living out, that there are sinister forces that work against us every single day. People that are truly evil. People that blew up the towers on 9/11. That was a life-changing moment for me. Kind of like was sour grapes for my freshman year of college. I was 2 weeks into college. I got into school about a week earlier. I'd been having a lot of fun for the first 3 weeks. But then after 9/11 happened, a lot of people were down for a little bit, but then they went right back into pilot mode almost. Well, there was always the fear, but, a lot of people in the college campus, they just went back into, drinking and partying and focusing on school. But I was just always sitting, something, I just had this thing with me like, oh my God, I cannot believe that they're getting away with this lie. I can't believe everybody's falling for this. Anyway, that was the event that that was the event that really changed me and made me think like, okay, maybe there's things that are more important than just getting good grades, meeting sweet girls, having a good time, worried about my future, get a good job, put money away, live in a nice place, those were probably my motivations as an 18-year-old before 9/11 happened. And then after that, it was like all of a sudden this new category came up. Okay, you knew something was wrong, but now you see it's really wrong. It's wronger than you thought. And how wrong can this get? I mean, who's ever responsible for this, what could they do next? Maybe whoever did this 9/11 day is the force behind so much of the other wrong things and injustices I see in this world. And now I know that that absolutely is the case. There are people who control this society, want it the way it is. They want poor people. They want people constantly fighting amongst themselves. They want people distracted. They don't want people caring about the truth. They don't want people investigating conspiracies. They really don't want that. They'll delete your YouTube channel nearly 20 times. I'm on my 20th YouTube channel. They'll employ a gang of trolls to harass you. It's just... Anyway. It's not about what they want, but it is about what people need to wake up to and the agendas and the things that need to be changed and how this stuff's being operated. So, again, just to get back into the main points. Oregon, again, the focus, the 33rd state. Police, masonry, secrecy, order, federal, 33. Again, Donald Trump. And Trump also said that he sent those federal police to Oregon on July 4th. On July 4th, right? Oregon's the only state that has the 74 Gematria with the alphabetic order. Independence Day 74, Holiday 74, bringing 74 and 33 together, this ongoing pattern which seems to relate to Jesus, crucifying Jesus at 33, Jesus cross, Messiah, gospel parables. But again, what if the Bible is full of all this truth that's been slightly edited so that people have the wrong idea? What if the story of Jesus is really about the story of humanity, and 33, the number that resonates with us because we have 33 bones in our spine that allows us to be upright and have, the features that we do, which sets us apart from most of the other living things on the planet. And Kundalini energy in 33. What if, again, it's like the truth's put in the Bible, but it's manipulated. It's made you to put your energy outside of yourself. Believe in an entity that's outside of yourself. And there are entities outside of ourselves, but again, I'm just saying that so much of the way that we're built as people and meant to understand the world is within internal mechanisms. Like when you do something right, you feel right. When you do something wrong, you feel wrong. You have this, whatever. Again, I know some people are atheists and they don't think there's a creator or a God. I happen to believe that there is a God, there's a creator, because just everything is too perfect. By the way, Big Bang equals 33, Genesis equals 33. This is a special number, spiritual number as well. And again, you just think about things like the church and how much influence they've had in the world of science and spirituality. We're even taught about this in our indoctrination schools. Big Bang, Genesis, the scientific story of creation, the biblical story of creation. And if you read Genesis, I mean, you get the truth in it, the story, but there's obviously missing details, and the way it seems like it's written for a child, because it's obvious the story of Adam and Eve and what God punishes them for has to do with sex, but it never uses the word sex. Just God punishes her with labor pains. Somebody got mad at me once and was like, how can you come to that conclusion? I was like, well, what other conclusion can you come to? Their punishment from doing the forbidden thing is labor pains? I mean, I don't know. I guess I went through a 4th grade public elementary health class. I'm pretty sure I knew about all that before then anyway, but anyway, it's just, the point I'm trying to say is all the information that comes to us is controlled, and it's like it's manipulated because it's meant to steer us astray and not see the truth and keep falling into traps. And again, for all the people who believe in Jesus and that God really sent his son to die on the cross for our sins, I mean, that's fine. You can believe that. I just don't like when people call in and say that Oh, well, because you don't believe in that story, there's damnation and hellfire for you. I mean, that's why I get mad at religious people. I don't care what your religious beliefs are, but don't call in or leave comments demonizing me because I don't believe the same as you. I was raised Lutheran again, and by the way, Portland, Oregon is said to be one of the most secular cities in the nation, which is also interesting. But anyway, I was raised Lutheran, and I believe in Jesus as a child, and I went to Sunday school, and we went to church, and I did get kicked out of confirmation class for asking too many questions, and then that's pretty much when I was done with religion. I thought, wow, I'm in trouble for asking questions. It's funny how that works. It's like you start to realize things that consider themselves authority, like government and church and media, they don't like to be questioned. They'll ban you for that. From the church, from Google, whatever. But, again, just all this information that's given to us. Bible also equals 33, by the way. So does Sunday, the only day of the week that equals 33. All the information we get, a lot of it has some truth in it, but it's tampered with. You know? All this stuff. And you just see what it's done to humanity. Is humanity in a good place in a time of, major religion, major government? No, people aren't even thinking. They're just believing. They're just following. They're just entrusting in authority. And how do they decide what's their authority? The things that are smashed in their head from the time they're a child, through the news, through school, through government. Look at the populace at this moment in age. What is the average person doing right now? They're not thinking at all. They're following nonsense. June, the beginning of June of this year just told us everything. At the same time, the news, after 3-4 months of a nonstop fear campaign, at the beginning of June, they said, you know what? Through the beginning of this pandemic, we've over-exaggerated the death count. It's not nearly as deadly. It's not nearly as contagious. People who are asymptomatic aren't really spreading it. And it's just like, wait a minute, this is the exact opposite of everything you told us at the beginning. At the beginning, you're saying there's all these asymptomatic carriers in it, and they can spread the deadly virus just as much as anyone else, which didn't even make sense. It's the first ever pandemic where you don't even know you're sick until you get a government health test that may produce a false result, as they've admitted to in their own headlines. And, but again, just all this stuff they said, you need to be light. I told everybody at the beginning, too, I said, all these chemicals that they're recommending, these things are carcinogenics, they're cancer-causing. The things that they're telling you to wash down your packaging with, your food with right now, this is the stuff that's toxic. Putting all this stuff on your hands, killing your good bacteria, like, you're really, like, on a war against your body. Putting this stuff on your hands constantly, all this alcohol and chemicals. I had a real good life experience when I first moved up to Seattle at the end of 2006. I had never gotten the flu shot in my life. And that following year, when I was working at a group home, a woman who worked there, who was older than me, who was well-educated, she told me that I was ignorant, and I'd be a lot happier if I got a flu shot. And I never got one in my life. And, I'd worked in this group home from the winter before, but she's saying, hey, it's nasty around here. You'll be a lot healthier with your flu shot. You'll be a lot less likely to get the flu. Well, and she was also recommending, like, Purell and that stuff was brand new back around then. Or at least I hadn't seen it before I worked at that group home. But that was all new stuff to me. Purell, hand sanitizer, and I got the flu shot for the first time in my life. It's the only time I got it. And I caught the flu shortly after. And I thought, this is no coincidence. I have never had the flu in my life. I'm healthy. I get the flu shot, and I'm the sickest I've ever been. I was miserable. I had a migraine that I could not get rid of for a week. Oh, my God, it was the worst. And I never got the flu shot again. I was like, that was not a coincidence. And she was also the one recommending hand sanitizer. I started reading about that stuff. There was information back then that stuff's not that good for you. And, what was it? 2 months ago, it was probably around the start of June as well. It was a mainstream headline about how all these different hand sanitizers are actually bad for you. And I was like, see, I told you guys. Now they even put it in CNN's front page to let you know. Mocking you. Clorox, super hazardous. But, anyway. They scared everybody up through June, remember? And then in June, they started to tell everybody, you don't need to be doing all this stuff. But they'd end those news broadcasts, but this governor just made masks mandatory. And you're like, whoa, as summer's approaching, the weather's getting warm, this isn't normally when people are sick. They're telling you that this pandemic hasn't even been nearly as bad as they made it seem the last 3 months, but now they're going to make you put masks on? Again, you guys, this is mockery. This is showing you that they can get away with anything. They can tell you a set of information that should bring you to a logical conclusion. Okay, I don't need to be living in fear because of this. I don't need to be pouring chemicals all over my food so I don't get the deadly virus. But now all of a sudden the government's going to make a new regulation that you need to wear masks when Anthony Fauci himself had said multiple times that wearing a mask wasn't a good idea because then people, I think his words would be futzing around with their masks, getting even more germs on their hands. And I think that's exactly right. During the summertime out here, the desert of Washington, where most days is around 100 degrees, you went out and you saw employees, having to stand outside with masks on, all this stuff they did, just sweating, pulling their mask up. Their mask keeps slipping down, pulling their mask up. I mean, it's just... We're ruled over by the worst of people, and the only reason people don't see it is because of all the indoctrination, all the programming. And also, because there's just so many psychological operations, people are made not to know who to trust. So many agents. A lot of people think I'm an agent, which is just laughable. Who got on here for the last 7 years, almost 7 days a week, and pumped out this information and showed what's up and tried to help people break out of the matrix? And who for the last 5 years has worked to organize people so that we can stand up and do something? Maybe there's some other people out there, but I'm saying I've been doing that. Just some reminders about last weekend's Saturday shooting in Portland, because we're on a Saturday again. You'll notice again and again in the national news, there's shootings by the numbers, but a disproportionate amount of them fall on Saturdays and Wednesdays. And the reason why is Saturday has Gematria of 109 and 107, so does shooting. And Wednesday has Gematria of 37 and 44, as does shooting. In this case, we had a shooting last Saturday in Portland, which equals 37 and 44. On August 29th, 8 plus 29, 37. Portland's nickname is Rip City 44. That day, their basketball star, Cliff Robinson, died at age 53. Remember, Trailblazers is 53, Los Angeles is 53. Died the day of the 53rd playoff game between Portland and Los Angeles, as Portland got closed out by LA. And just the night before that happened, I talked about how celebrities and athletes with connections to 89 end up dying in the time of the playoffs in tribute to King James, because King James is 89. Clifford Robinson was 89. He began his NBA career in 89. I mean, I said that the night before he died. And LeBron closes out his old team the next day. And then on that same day, the national news is about a deadly shooting in Portland. And the NBA had just led a protest related to shootings, Again, politics, sports, news, rituals year after year. This sign that the media threw out here is interesting as well. Worried. And then it says, it's probably Jesus, but the same spelling as Jesus. I can't make out the second name. Maybe Alan? Security. But isn't that interesting that CNN chose this? This is in Oregon. Remember, Oregon's the only state that sums to 74, like Jesus, cross, Messiah, gospel, parables. And for people who don't get the gospel parables part, the story of Jesus is the gospel. Jesus spoke in parables in the Bible, which are riddles. When I worked at the group home, sometimes the children there, they'd have to leave to go to another facility where it was stricter because if they were severely acting out, like trying to really hurt themselves or other kids, they'd get sent to another place where it was more restrictive. A really sad place for children to be. But there was this young girl, and she was, every Sunday, we took her to church. There were some kids that wanted to go to church on Sundays, which the group home would do. And she was probably the most inspired by Christianity out of all the children, you could say. And it was so strange that and she would also have these really sad periods where she had to act out. But anyway, she was gone for about 2 weeks, and she came back. And when she came back, a new child had moved in the room next to hers, and they put up the child's first name on the door, and his name was Jesus. But it was just funny when she came back that she saw right away that her roommate was Jesus, and she thought Jesus was in the building, and that was something we had to explain to her. But that kid was great too, Jesus. And it's just so sad what's done to these little children, man. Jesus, he was just a little boy. He had the best smile. Little Mexican kid. He had the rat tail. He was all into the Seahawks. He loved to throw the football. But then you look at the things that had been done to this child, and it was just amazing that he could still. That's the thing about when you work with these children and you see what's been done to them. You just see their perseverance. This child still smiles. He still tries to have a good time. But man, if he has a bad day, woo! That's where these children were not like children you've seen before. They will try to kill you. So, again. Anyway. All these operations, and here we are a week later. And again, this was last week. Cliff Robinson dead at 53, the morning of the Blazers' last game against Los Angeles. Los Angeles 53, Trailblazers 53, his nickname Uncle Cliff 53. These stats were before that game was played. So you see the Lakers were up 3-1. They closed them out that day 4-1. And that became the 53rd playoff game between these two teams. And again, there's a lot of people in the community trying to compete and say that everything is organic, that there's no agenda, there's nothing sinister going on. They're essentially telling you that the Jesuits aren't behind this. And, Cliff Robinson just died at 53 because this is the way God likes it. God must have saw that the Blazers and Lakers were playing for the 53rd time that day. And just like I talked about the night before, God loves a good King James ritual. So he's going to take another athlete with an 89 name whose NBA career also started in 89. And, again, these people who are coming along and saying that I don't talk about the organic side, realize I wrote about it in both my books. And years before those people were here, I was talking about the organic side. And I said that's why I think they're so invested in this, because their manipulation helps fulfill their rituals. So, again, Native Americans will tell you when they danced for rain, it brought the rain. There's things about this world we don't understand. So, also, that was on the 8/29 date as well. Ended up having the deadly shooting that same day, but Los Angeles has the 37 connection, as does Portland. And that was the 241st day of the year, the 53rd prime for some extra 53. I should say it's what's typically the 241st day of the year. It is a leap year, but like I've always explained in leap years, you got to pay attention to what day it is in the leap year and what day it normally is. 241, the 53rd prime. On that day, Los Angeles closes out the Trailblazers in the 53rd game between the two teams, and Uncle Cliff's dead at 53. So... Okay, so I think we've covered just about everything, and there's more that can be said. There's a lot of stuff we've covered over the months past. Remember, with regards to the Jesuits, Jesuit Orders 54. Again, their first Jesuit university, Georgetown, was established by John Carroll while he was 54 in 1789. John Carroll's 54, and the same day that the autonomous zone was set up next to the Jesuit University in Seattle is the same day that Portland got their police chief who's overseeing the protests. And that was June 8, 2020, a date with 54 numerology. And with regards to the Jesuit Order's connection to 54, sun is 54. Their logo's the sun. And remember, in the 16th century, the Catholic Church gave us the Gregorian calendar, and English was standardized as a 26-letter alphabet at about the exact same time, and that was just shortly after the Jesuits were recognized by Rome. So think about it. These events, and again, as I've talked about over many years, and as I wrote about in my first book, the story is for how the Cabal started, that it started with the Catholic Church, and I wrote about that in my first book. The story is that the Knights Templar, the Templar cross is in the Jesuit logo. IHS with the Templar cross above it. The story is that after the Crusades, the Knights Templar got this ancient knowledge, things like Kabbalah and Hermeticism and alchemy, all this stuff, and they brought it back to the Catholic Church, and they studied the knowledge, and they must have found its relevance. And perhaps they had like the complete manuscript. Think about it. What I got to start with was a page in a book that says, here's Gematria, and here's 2 ciphers. Imagine if somewhere else there's a book that says, here's Gematria, here's the ciphers, and, with all the ways they're trying to bring attention to racial difference, today is the Kentucky Derby at Churchill Downs, and it's September 5th, and that date's interesting for a couple reasons, but they're making it all about race in the time of Black Lives Matter. And remember, in the most pure cipher, Black Lives Matter is 56, just like Society of Jesus is 56. And you see how Society of Jesus is 191? So is Black Panther Party, 191. And the first Black Panther meetings were cipher. Churchill Downs is 169, right? That number has a square root of 13. And the black owner, this is the name of his, he's the first black owner in 13 years. So there's a relationship with 13 in the name Churchill Downs. His horse's name is Necker Island, which is well named for Churchill Downs. And Necker Island's also 52 like Pope. Remember, today's 263 days after the Pope's birthday. The 56th prime Pope is 52 and 56. He's the first Jesuit Pope, Society of Jesus 56. Again, it's 263 days after his birthday today, the 56th prime. And just notice how Kentucky Derby and Society of Jesus have overlap. Again, these people have connections, so anyway. But just realize it's all everything. You got to watch the Kentucky Derby today. You got to hear about the racial division. You tune into the news. They're talking about the racially charged protests in Portland and other cities. If you don't care about that, you're hearing about the latest on coronavirus and the rigged and controlled political system by the same individuals. You got the Catholic here who chose his VP nominee as Kamala Harris, who turned a blind eye to Catholic pedophilia. You got Jesuit-educated Trump, who has sexual feelings for his own daughter. It's just, this is the Jesuit circus they got to stream. I don't know why that is. I don't know why there's a big echo. Sorry, I'm just now seeing some of these messages. But, here, I'll take calls in a minute. Let me see if I adjust this over here. There's something over here that I'm actually not using right now because I thought it would be fine. I normally just use it when Sweet Lady's here. I bought a sound blocking curtain, and I don't know if because I've been using that, the sound normally sounds better than it does today, but hold on. I'm going to take off the call screening here. Or hold on, not that. What is it? Do not disturb. Give me 1 second. I'm going to do this sound curtain to see if it makes it sound better, and then we'll take calls.